Realize that. Okay. Hello, I'm on the telephone interviewing Mr. Samuel Slater, and he was actually a student at the Our Lady of Angels at one particular time, and I'm going to let him give information. Mr. Samuel Slater, could you please let me know some information about the school and the time frame, please?
Well, during the time, it was, Chicago was really booming, and I just come up, my mother had remarried, and the first school that I went to was a parochial school, and it was an experience for me, because, especially after I went to public school, because it was entirely different, because of the religious factor.
Uh-huh.
I can remember, having those little fun drivers, because even in first grade you had to do that. You had to go out and get your, what they call them, little gleaners, filled up with some dimes and quarters and stuff like that. And, personally, I really didn't like it because, it was very strict, and at the time, I wasn't used to that type thing. But you have to do what you got to do, especially when your parents are paying for it.
This is true.
And like I said, it was a long time ago. If it was something about the turbulent '60s, I probably could speak on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I understand.
But being that young, and when I went to public schools, there was nothing too dramatic that would make that stay on my mind.
So, did you like the school?
Oh, well, it's kind of hard to say at that young age where you like the school. First grade, I'm pretty much, unlike today when kids, they definitely can't do the things that I could do. First grade, kindergarten, I was even going to school by myself.
Oh, wow.
Parents trusted me.
Well, that's cool. Nowadays you
throughout my
can't.
life, I can always say, well, Mom, I want to go sell newspapers. I could do that. Even as tough as the city was. But I really didn't find out how tough the city was until, I say when I got up to the fifth grade, then I started understanding about the violence and stuff which is still going on to this day.
True.
Because it is a big city. And I always lived in the ghetto, so you learn how to protect yourself early in life. You couldn't go home and get your daddy to go beat up a kid that was bullying. When we talk about bullying, I've been associated with bullying all my life. You had to do, you had to fight back. You can go running to the teacher and say, so-and-so is messing with me, because that wasn't going to stop it. You had to stand up for yourself. I don't know if any kids back then, was committing suicide like they are now.
Oh, I know. Now it's scary. This day and age is very scary.
Yeah, because that little kid little black kid, that school was right across the street from me. I can't think of his name right now. A couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
We went home and hung himself.
Oh, yeah.
Right across the street. I walked out my one day at CNN and all the big newspapers and stuff was out there.
Wow.
I understand about bullying,
But it's still hard. So how was the...
I'm not no sociologist or psychologist,
True.
I can only, when I was growing up, somebody bullied you, you have to pick up for yourself. You know, sometimes you ran, sometimes you fought. You know.
Well, Mr. Slater, how was it segregated, integrated when you were back in school at that particular time? What year was that?
1949.
Could you please repeat that?
And I was 1949.
Okay.
And I don't know what the ratio was, but I know I wasn't the only black kid there.
Okay.
You know,
a lot of students.
You didn't have the Hispanic explosion probably until 2 or 3 years later. You know, my first recollection of an Hispanic was I say 53. You know, that was me, a person against a person. You know, I distinguish between black and white because I'd always go to the South in the summertime to spend time with my grandparents. You know, even at that age, I knew what prejudice was all about. I saw it. You know, but I got over it. You know, I never was afraid of anything like that. You know, of my safety or anything. You know, I went where I wanted to go and did what I wanted to say. You know, so I guess you could say I was lucky.
Yeah.
Mom didn't come, you know. But I had some pretty rough relatives, you know. You know, but if you did something to one of us, you know, no matter where we was at, you know, it was gonna be some retribution or whatever you need, for lack of a better word, you know. So I never worried about, you know, that part of, you know, people want something to me because of the color of my skin.
Uh-huh. So back then,
and, you know, I
was going to say, in 1958, you were no longer a student at Our Lady of Angels. You were going to an actual public high school, correct?
Right.
Was that in the same area?
Yeah, I went to Farragut, and we had some pretty big-time alumnus that went there. You know, Kevin Garnett, probably one of the most famous ones, went there too. Although much years later, and we had a championship boxer, Ernie Terrell, and then we had football players that played in the Canadian League and eventually came and played with the pros. I think he played with the Patriots.
Really?
But,
wow.
But as far as trouble in the school, you know, we had a policeman assigned to the school, and so that didn't jump off, you know. Because he didn't tolerate any violence, you know, on the ground.
Well, was the police officer assigned to your school because of the segregation fights that were going on at the time in 1958?
No, that was a common practice in Chicago.
Oh.
You always had a police officer on duty at all schools. Not good, you know, when he was there, and everybody respected him because he would hurt you if you didn't.
Okay. So, wow. So the community that you lived in, you said the school was located, as you stated, in the ghetto, and that was the south side of Chicago, correct?
Oh, you mean high school?
Well, I'm not sure. Basically, when the school that you moved into, when you came from Mississippi and Chicago, you were on the South Side. What
It was,
area?
it was, what I would call the ghetto.
Oh, okay. But it was still a nice area because it seems to be nice from what they're
Yeah.
showing.
Yeah, during that time, yeah. Every area that I lived in, was nice. Eventually, I probably use the word, maybe not right,
Uh-huh.
because, you were so close to, poverty and stuff like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Economy wise, exactly. I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. So the good thing is that I'm sorry.
It wasn't the elite part of the city, you know, and the suburbs, they back then they just didn't have no black suburbs,
Yeah, okay.
That came a little bit later. It was like, a couple of black families moved into a neighborhood, then you had the white exit. And before you know it, it was all black,
Uh-huh.
That's the way, Chicago back then was a very cliquish place. Everybody stayed to themselves,
Oh, okay.
coming around like 60s and 70s.
Uh-huh.
Lithuanians here, black people here, Puerto Ricans here, Germans here, Italians there. The gangsters had their own spot. Everybody performed.
Everybody had their little domain.
Yeah, and you just didn't just go, in other people's territory.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much like it is, in big cities now, only it's gang related now. We had gangs back then, some of them are still active.
Wow.
But I managed to not to get involved with gangs.
Uh-huh.
I finished my schooling, and then a couple of years later I got married. A couple of years later I left Chicago. I left Chicago in 1967.
Oh, okay.
Moved to the East Coast.
Wow. So, what else famous or something memorable that might have happened in the year of 1958 that you can remember in Chicago, Illinois?
I graduated.
Well, that's definitely something to remember.
I graduated, and that was another milestone.
Exactly.
But I know the gang situation really started getting pretty rough, in Chicago in 1958.
Wow.
One of them was like the conservative rights lord. They was getting up there, and I can't remember the exact year, but I can remember Martin Luther King coming to Chicago and staying in a rundown house. I can remember that.
Wow.
So that had to be close to 58. I can remember when he did a march in Tokyo, Illinois, which was predominantly white. A lot of the marches, like Marquette Park and stuff like that. I remember those things.
Mm-hmm. Wow. There's something else back there.
Like I said, a lot of stuff happened after I left.
Oh, okay. And the famous people that you would... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The famous people you were talking about that were in your school, they also graduated from the school that you went to in 1958?
No, I'd say some of them was like, people before me, some like 59, some like 60, because I graduated in 1962.
Oh, okay.
But I saw these people,
Yeah.
you're a freshman, so, you're always in all